Hi there, I'm Woolly Wormhead and I'm a knit designer specialising in knitted hats, technique and construction. If you've been following me for a while, you might know that we have monthly knit-alongs both in the forum on my website and in my Ravelry group and my Facebook group. We feature a technique or a theme each month. My moderators are fantastic at this because they're really encouraging everybody to knit along. And sometimes it's a style of hat, sometimes it's a hat from a new collection, and sometimes it's a technique. The idea being that hats are great projects for practicing new techniques on. It's never just about the hat, it's always about something new to learn, because with my patterns, I'm very, very keen for you to learn new techniques. I include lots of tutorials. I want to try and help you kind of get those new knitting skills under your belt. And so for April 2025, we've decided that knitted tucks would be a really good technique to focus on. And in British knit speak, it's a tuck, and in US knit speak, it's a welt. I think the British side comes from sewing tucks, but I don't know where the US terminology comes from. But what I mean by tucks are these. Let me just show you. Now, this is a hat of mine that's literally called Tucked because it's tucks worked with short rows. Now, should I put that on for you? Show you what it looks like? My hair is going to disappear. Let me just slowly look around. You can see that the tucks all gather at the back and then they spread out at the front because they're separated by the short rows. Now they are sections of stocking stitch with short rows in, and then you've got these reverse stocking stitch tucks all the way through. Now tucks are not difficult to make. Take my hair. They're not difficult to make. They're just a little bit fiddly and maybe something different. I have a few patterns. Well, we're having a try-on game, so why not? This is called Bee-Law because it's like a little beehive with a light ball at the top. And the tucks in this one are worked in a contrasting colour, and we've got 3 tucks at the beginning of the brim. A couple of hats have that. The tuck that I've just showed you has that. This is a barrier pattern called Bedragoned. I'm going to put this on somehow. Hope you're going to laugh at me now. Putting on my hat wonky because the mirrors, the camera's mirrored. Which way are we going? We're going that way. That's it. So we can see here they've got really tight little tucks along the brim, but it's a little bit fiddly, but it makes a really nice edge to the beret. And I am really not doing it justice by putting it on me. I am not. Let's have a look, see if you can see there. Those edges. Isn't that lovely? Nice detail. And I have a few more. This one is a beanie hat called Sumner. That's knit in sock weight yarn. It's got a double brim, and then it's got concentric rings that go. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. If I stay still, it will focus. But concentric rings that go all the way up to the crown. And again, it's the tucks that make that detail. There we go. That's in focus there. Whoop, come back. Isn't that nice detail? And there are a few others. I'm not going to try them all on. This one is called Infilare, and this one has tucks at the brim, but also uses the same method that's used for creating the tucks throughout the pattern of the body. The camera's having a moment there with the focus. Let's see if I can bring it in front of me like this. There we go. And another one is called Tabush, which is a vintage style kind of like pillbox hat that's got tucks around the top to help give it a nice firm structure. Now, knitting the tucks is state of my hair. Won't live this one down, will I? Woolly's quip is not behaving. Okay, so knitting the tucks, there's 2 ways to do them. Firstly, there's 2 types. One that starts at the brim, like on Bedragoned and a couple of the others, where you've got the first part of the brim is a tuck. That starts with a provisional cast on, and the stitches are joined together. And then the other tucks are created by picking up stitches and joining them together. So you knit a few rows of stocking stitch in between, depending on how many depends on what the pattern says. And then you join the stitches together. Now, a lot of the time when you on large garments, what you might do is you would release, say if it's the provisional cast on, you would release all the stitches and put them onto a second needle. So it means you're holding 2 needles together worth of stitches and you're going to knit them together. I find that a really easy method because I can make sure that my stitches are lining up. But when you're working on a small circumference like a hat, that's a lot of kind of like fiddly kind of needles in a small space to worry about. And similarly, when you are picking up stitches to join it to make a tuck, trying to put them all onto the needle can be quite fiddly because as soon as you start to pick up stitches, it makes the rest of the knitting tighter. So what I recommend for small circumference is doing one stitch at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the overhead. I'll sort my hair out while I'm there. And I'm going to demo, firstly, how you can do it with provisional cast on, i.e. for those patterns like Belor, tucked and bedragon that have a tuck at the bottom of the brim. They start provisional cast on. And then I will show you how you can make tucks by picking up stitches from the back of the work. So I'm going to switch to the overhead and then we'll get started. All right. So in this swatch that I have here, I have a piece that started with a provisional cast on, and I've knitted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows there, and I'm going to bring them up. The idea is that we bring them up, join them together to make a little tuck like this. All right. Now, as I say, you could release all of these stitches from provisional cast on and put them onto a spare needle, but there's going to be a lot of kind of like, you've got to look quite a lot going on already, and it's a small circumference, and an extra needle can actually just kind of like, you end up fighting with them, and you don't really want to be doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the provisional cast on. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I always recommend to not rip the entire provisional cast on out in one go. Do it stitch by stitch, and we're going to do exactly the same here. So the first stitch that we want to release is directly underneath this one. Let's do that from the front. So there's the first stitch, and it lines up underneath. Let me make sure. Yep, it's underneath that one there. You do have to make sure that you're lining up to the right place. So what we want to do is put our needle into that stitch there, slip the provisional cast on out, put it on, and then knit it together. And you can do this all the way through. So put the needle in, undo that, pop it up, and put it on. This is by far the kind of like the easiest way to do it on a small circumference piece of knitting. And you can see that the first tuck is starting to form there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on, finish this round, then I'm going to work a few plain rounds of, say, reverse stocking stitch or something, so that we are then going to be ready to look at how you can make a tuck mid-fabric that doesn't require a provisional cast on. And then you'll also see this one finished. Okay, me and my wonky quip are ready to show you the next part of this demo to show you how to join a tuck or to create a tuck at this point. Before I do that, I just want to show you how this ended at the end here. So this first stitch was the first one that we joined, and I carried on all the way around, and then we just got to the end of it. I mean, when you get to the end of the provisional cast on, you're gonna have enough stitches there. You just continue joining all the way around until your stitches are all used up at your provisional cast on, and then what you get is a double ridge here, because obviously that's where you knitted the stitches together. This technique is not a lot different to do, say, doing a folded brim or a folded cuff. The difference is that you don't put any kind of ridge or anything down here to kind of make it sit flat, because the idea of a tuck is that it's much shorter than a folded brim. It's kind of just a few rows and then they're pulled in together, so you get that kind of like ridge that sort of sticks out. It's same technique as doing a folded brim or a folded cuff, but the kind of like the knitting that goes on in between is different, so it gives a different result. But here That's where I started, went all the way around and finished here. And just carry on with your provisional cast on until all the stitches are released and joined. Then what I did, I worked a couple of rounds of reverse stocking stitch just to kind of put a break in between the beginning tuck and the one that we're going to create here. And I've stopped now. I think I've knitted roughly the same amount of rounds as there were down here. For this demo, it doesn't matter if it's not exactly the same. What we are going to do is we are going to go down and we are going to find where we want to join. And it's still a bit awkward, so I'm hoping the camera behaves. Where we want to join the stitch that picks up, or the ridge. So what we have to do here is we have to pick up these ridges. I recommend going with the lower ridges because they line up a little bit better. Hang on, nope, we're going to go with that one. Let's see. Let me bring in a spare needle to make sure that we are counting down correctly. So let's get that out of the way. And this is probably one of the kind of like the fiddliest bits about this, is making sure you're joining it to the right thing. But I've found that whether you join it to that part or that part doesn't make a huge difference as long as you're consistent, really. That. So we're going to have that ridge there. So technically it's that one that we want to pick up. But if you do end up going with a lower one, so long as you're consistent all the way through, it's not going to jog it out. It's just half a stitch out. It's not going to make a huge difference, but that's the one that we want to do. So for this, let's remember that we are picking up that upper half of the ridge on the back there. So if you were doing this on a larger circumference, you could get a spare needle and pick all of those up to make sure you're picking up the right ones. I'm already getting lost again. So you'd start there, pick them up, and put one to a needle, but we're not going to do that. We are going to pick that up, put it on, and knit them together. And then we're going to go to the next one. And you can see what I mean about it makes the fabric tight because you're pulling those stitches up until you've done a few of them. You see the tuck starting to create there. And remember, we're going into the next one that sits along that line of ridges. Okay, let's get back into the center of the frame there. Okay. And doing it ridge by ridge, stitch by stitch, it's not dissimilar to doing the provisional cast on way. You're doing one stitch at a time, making sure you're in the right place, and you're having you're fighting less with your needles. I mean, if you're working in a larger circumference, then by all means and I would, if you do go with the route of using a needle to pick up all of these stitches in one go with a smaller size needle because it does pull out of the fabric. All right, they will get tight. So I would use a smaller needle. I'm just putting the tip in there to pick it up. Or just do it stitch by stitch as I'm doing here. So I am going to continue doing this all the way around. Just do it a couple more times to demo. So I'm picking up there, popping it onto the needle and just knitting them together. You can see what that looks like on the front, and it's making a very, very predominant tuck. It's more noticeable because I've worked these rows of reverse stocking stitch in between. For the bedragoned hat and tucked and B-law that have consecutive tucks at the brim, there is no gap in between. They're worked right next to each other to give that really structural effect. This one I've just done this for the sake of a demo, but what it does is it helps show you what they look like when they're continuous, and they are really nice and structural. Look at that, that's a lovely kind of detail. And from the back, it's going to look very similar to that because you've got two stitches that you're knitting together, so you're going to get that kind of like double ridge at the back because you've done a K2 together with the stitches. So that's one way of knowing where you've worked them, and it's not dissimilar to that down there. So I'm going to come do a couple more, and then I'm going to finish the round and show you what they look like afterwards when they have been completely finished. So we're going to go in there, pick that up. And as I say, if you end up working with the bottom half of the loop, it really doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. It's only going to be half a stitch out. It's not going to ruin your tuck. What makes your tuck go wonky is when you're a stitch or more out. Okay, so I'm now going to just finish this. So you have to sit and watch me work my way through all of the stitches on this. And then I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. One thing that I didn't get to show you before was how you come to the end of a round of working tucks with the provisional cast on. With the provisional cast on, it's fairly easy because once you run out of stitches, everything's joined. All right, and you've got the waste yarn in there that indicates which stitches you need to pick up. When you are picking up from the back of the fabric without any waste yarn to kind of like show you where the stitches are, it's a little bit more fiddly and it's a little bit trickier. So I thought as I'm about to finish this round, I'd quickly show you what I do to have a look through. Now, what we want to do is have a quick look on the reverse and remember that we're picking up the top ridges here, along here. And the one that's the most awkward is, let me bring that spare needle in, is the one that's right at the end because that's where we joined our first stitch. And so it kind of pulls the fabric up. And this one actually kind of like ends up getting a little bit lost. So we know that the next one, that stitch is going to go to that one, this one to that one, this one to that one, and there is that stitch there. Okay. As I say, with the provisional cast on, you don't have this issue because the stitches are all held on the waste yarn. The waste yarn's long, unless you've pulled the whole yarn out, then obviously you might lose your stitches and you don't want to do that. But your waste yarn is a way of indicating where the stitches are. Or if you've already put them onto a spare needle, if you're doing a larger circumference piece, then you've already got your stitches there. This way, you've just got to be mindful of where that last one is to be picked up to close off the end of the round. And don't forget that circular knitting, when you're working in the round, you do get a jog when you change between stitch patterns or things. So you are it's going to sit slightly up when we get to this point. It'll be more obvious from the other side. I'm sure you're familiar with having a jog, say in guard stitch worked in the round or other stitch patterns that when you change, it creates a little bit of a difference. So 1, 2, make sure we're going the right ones. Yeah, that's 2. Sorry, let's get back in the center of frame. Sorry about that. Then that one. And then that one. Remember, we had to have a little dig around and look for it. It's there. It kind of not looking quite right this side because we've already joined there, but that's the one that we want to pick up. And it feels tight because it's right next to where we started the tuck. And there we have that tuck completely finished. I'm just going to work a couple of stitches of reverse stocking stitch just to get the next round started, and I'll show you what it looks like from behind. And there we can see this is the lower half of the kind of ridge, the first round of stocking stitch that we worked on that side. That's the lower ridge, and there's the upper ridge that we worked together and knitted together with the stitches that we had on the top end of the tuck. And that's what it will look like all the way around. And that will even itself out there. That's, you can see where that's where the jog is, where we started a new round in on here. I'm now going to continue working a few more rounds of reverse stocking stitch, and then we'll have a look at how it looks overall. And here we are with our finished section of tucks. Now, obviously, this is a demo. It's not to a pattern. So these tucks are different sizes because they're a demo piece. This one is probably slightly larger than I would put on a brim. This is probably more like what I would use throughout the body of a pattern. But either way, they have been created. You've seen how they've been worked. You can see the way that they stand out from the fabric. Let's see if we can get a 3D profile here. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? I really like these kind of structural details in knitting. And this actually adds, when you, especially in the tucked hats that have, the tucked hats, they've all got tucks in them, the hats that have series of tucks along the edge of the brim, they give a nice firm brim. It's not unstretchy. It is actually quite stretchy. Let me just, this is the tucked hat. It's got plenty of give in it, but it makes it a nice firm edge. It doesn't roll. No, not too tight at all. And there's all the tucks worked on the back, because these were done in reverse stocking stitch against stocking stitch, and they're almost invisible. So I hope that's given you an idea of how to create the tucks, how they can look. They can be worked in different stitches. They don't have to be worked in stocking stitch or reverse stocking stitch. If you're working on a larger circumference, or if you're somebody that actually finds it easier to work them all together with 2 sets of needles, then go for it. I just thought I'd show you this way because I find it more practical for a smaller circumference like a hat. There is nothing difficult in working tucks. If you can pick up stitches or pick up a stitch and knit it together with something else, you can work a tuck. That's it. That's really all you're doing. If you've done folded brims, then you've already got the skill set that you need to work a tuck. And if you've not, then as I say, you're just picking up stitches either from provisional cast on or from the back of your knitting and knitting it together with another stitch one at a time. That's all you're doing. The most important thing is just to make sure that you keep going in a straight line. You know, when we were kind of looking at the back of the knitting of the demo swatch that I was doing, and there's obviously you've got kind of like 2 parts to the back of a row of stocking stitch, 2 rows of ridges, one that curves one way and one that curves the other. If you pick up the wrong part, it doesn't matter so much because it's going to be half a stitch out. It's not going to distort your tuck, so long as you're consistent throughout, right? That's the main thing. Don't worry too much if you do end up half a stitch out. As long as you do it all the way through, your tuck isn't going to look distorted. And that's it to them, really. They're not difficult at all, and they look fantastic in hats because they add an element. They make your hat nice and warm. It makes for a firmer brim, but without losing any stretch, and it adds really nice, interesting detail. So if you are going to join us for the monthly knit along this time, I would love to see what you make with it. If you're watching this at a video another time, or you're not knitting one of the patterns, then I hope that it's been helpful in showing you how tucks or welts can be created. Thanks again to my patrons for supporting me and enabling me to be able to make more free content. If you are interested in helping me make more free videos, free workshops, free tutorials, photo tutorials on my blog, or even free patterns, then do consider subscribing to my Patreon, because I wouldn't be able to do this without them. And if you can do the whole YouTube thing of subscribing and liking, etc., that would be much appreciated too. Until next time, happy hatting.